Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The first time, maybe in 30 years, India has got a government which is a single majority party. After 30 years, basically, we've got a government which is there. So the government has got the mandate to push forward a huge amount of reforms. I think the challenge, this government came on the promise, on the hope of good governance and reform agenda. And I think that is a topic that we're going to cover today. And I've got some really good panel members out here who have got some good views on some of these areas. But I'll just give you a bit of mine before I open up to asking them a few questions around it. I think the most important thing that has happened in India is that our growth, which had slowed down, is slowly inching up. And if you look at the economy, you look at the economy around you, the global economy that is there, you have got China, which is slowing down. You have got Europe, which is struggling at the moment. You've got America, which has its ups and downs. So this gives a great opportunity to India, which is growing. Possibly one of the few economies that is growing at a good pace to be able to find its place. But then the question which comes up, is 5% or 5.6% good enough, considering that year on year, we're going to have 18 to 19 million people join the workforce. So is this 5.6% good enough? And this is a question that I'll pose to the panelists. We have the Prime Minister who came forward and actually made 3 or 4 very large announcements, if you notice, in this last period. One was financial inclusion, where he said that I must bring the unbanked society, unbanked Indian population. Now, just to give you a small statistic on this, the banking sector penetration is about 30%. And the telecom, mobile, or the telecom penetration is about 75 to 80, depends how you count the 2 or 3 mobile phones each one has. So let's take it's about 75%. So there is this huge opportunity of moving more people, because 75% of the country actually owns a mobile phone. And only 30% of the country has actually got a bank account. So that's the big gap, and that's the convergence that is going to be played out. And that's a huge digital revolution and which is going to take place in this country. And if you look at the new companies, just to give you one, AOL took 9 years to get 1 million customers. Instagram took a few hours to get 1 million customers, 1 million people logging onto it. So that's the size of change that we are seeing. And that is the size, that is the kind of revolution. And then you have the Prime Minister launching Digital India, which is very much in keeping with where you need to go, because you look at the Flipkarts of the world, which have got these huge valuations. So e-commerce is one area which one looks at, plus e-governance around the government departments, which will also root out some of the corruption, because the moment you don't have human hands touching it and a system taking over, corruption gets reduced to that extent. This government has been in power for the last 5 months. The question that we need to ask ourselves is, there is no big bang reform that has happened or something which is there, but small changes have been made. And those changes go a long way. And I will just give you one example of what the previous government did, where they increased the diesel price by 50 paisa every month. And today the diesel price is almost the price of the petrol. I mean, they've actually achieved their objective in a very way. So many times to move an elephant, you need to bring those small changes, and those small changes can have high impact. So I don't think we should get too disappointed. And you know, this country, all these changes take time to implement and take time to come out. Very simply, last 2 years, investments dried up in the economy. There were hardly any investments. So to even get the economy going, investments will first need to come in, then those investments. So I think the way I look at it, this is my personal view, and maybe I can get challenged by my fellow panelists or by the audience. It's going to take at least 2 years before one sees any thing changing in this country in terms of the growth. One of the big things people are hoping for is budget 2015. A lot of hope is there on goods and service tax. A lot of hopes are there on some more FDI opening up. A lot of hope is there on some reforms and some legislation changes. The biggest bane which I see is this ease of doing business. It is frustrating for people who are Indian business people or foreigners who want to come to India. They are frustrated about that. Please, I think the important point is everybody in this world wants to manufacture in their own country. India is not the only one. And people are going to make choices. There is a lot of money lying on global balance sheets. They will find their way to the places where it is most easy to do business. And there could be a time the India consumption story will give way to somebody saying it's too frustrating to set up business, I forget yours, I will go and make money somewhere else. So I think those are the questions which I'll keep here with you all in the audience. And Jyoti, I'll ask you the first question. This whole question which is coming around ease of doing business, which has become a big buzzword and everybody's talking about it. Every time you pick up the papers, there's something on ease of doing business. And the disappointment that came into the country when we got ranked 142 by the World Bank. And people say the only thing the World Bank comes to is Delhi and Mumbai. But what would in your assessment, if we have to bring some changes on that ease of doing business, where would you like the government to concentrate on?
Investment is like water, it's going to find its own level. It's going to go where the investor thinks that he can do business easily, his investment is safe, and he is entitled to a return that he will actually be able to get at some point in time. Now, for us, the problems, if you look at those 8 parameters, there are several of those which are within the state's jurisdiction, there are several which are within the federal jurisdiction. But I actually, and it's not going to, the Prime Minister said we want to be number 50 on that list. That's a pretty ambitious plan of saying we're going to drop down by easily 100 points to come to around 50. And that obviously cannot be achieved in 2 years or 3 years. This will have to be a decade-long program to get things going, because change, as you know, is constant, but it's also the most difficult thing to do sometimes. But I think the important part, and which I like to sort of emphasize, is that why is it that we are talking about certain level of economic growth and therefore attracting investment and so on? I think to my mind, the biggest issue that we have is generation of 200 million jobs by 2024. And how is that going to happen? That is not going to happen if business is difficult to do. Today, those kinds of businesses constitute almost 75% of our GDP. And really, we are not addressing that. So if we really want to talk about attracting investment and getting business done, I think we have to see how are we going to create those jobs. Those jobs are going to be done by SMEs. These jobs are not going to be all in the services sector. In fact, I might give one just a bit of statistics, which is banking in the last 20 years has grown by God knows how many times, tenfolds, I don't know the number. But one number I do know is that the jobs in the banking sector actually today are lesser than they were in 1991. So clearly, for us to focus on making things easier for businesses to set up and operate is the key thing if we want to benefit from the so-called demographic dividend, and if we want to prevent it from becoming the demographic bomb. And it's big. I was 2 weeks back in Japan and sharing these very interesting same numbers for the 2 countries. In Japan, 35% of the population is above 65 years age. And in India, 65% of the population is below 35 years of age. So we got to see how do we turn this and channelize this, and that's why we need economic growth, because without economic growth, we will be on a very slippery slope.
Thank you, Jyoti. Arun, now I'll turn to you and the Prime Minister's big campaign on Make in India. Are there any views you would like to share with the audience on this manufacturing growth that India is looking for and this Make in India campaign that he's launched? And what is it that we may need to do if we want to actually truly take advantage of this Make in India campaign?
Thanks, Richard. I think manufacturing of all sorts was always an opportunity in India. And India has done brilliantly well in several areas of manufacturing. At a time when nobody believed the automotive components became such a dynamic industry that today they are original equipment suppliers to companies around the world. Pharmaceutical industry, if you take, in the 1970s, virtually the Indian pharmaceutical industry was dominated by multinationals. The Indian entrepreneurs set up the Indian pharmaceutical manufacturing setups, and today, pharmaceutical industry in India manufactures more than 45% of the generic drugs sold in US. And it's one of the largest suppliers of pharmaceutical medicines to Africa and many other countries, the whole of African continent and many other countries. And I can go on and on listing industries where India has made a mark in manufacturing. And Make in India is primarily targeted towards making use of India as a manufacturing base. And for India to succeed in manufacturing base, all that cynicism, all that pessimism has to be driven away. And for that, pragmatic policies, good regulations, good support, good framework, good infrastructure, all of that needs to be established. The challenges that I see Prime Minister Modi's government is going to face is first to have the policies, the intentions translated into bills which will get passed as acts. We all know that in the Lok Sabha, the party has a majority, but the bills will also have to get passed through Rajya Sabha, and that could possibly be a challenge at times. Once the bills are passed, we need the administrative machinery to enforce it in a manner that it facilitates business, not in the manner that it has been administrated till now, where we know the curse of license Raj, we know the curse of Inspector Raj, we know the curse of all the strangulating administrative machinery. So administrative efficiency is going to be the third. I think these are the three challenges Prime Minister Modi's government is going to face. If we address this, I think Make in India is an eminently realizable dream. It's not, it cannot only remain a slogan. I think it is an eminently realizable dream.